Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for joining in this heat. I hope you're all surviving okay. My name's Aifric Lennon. I'm the Global Director of Research and Strategy at MassiveMusic. And I'm here today to talk to you about something that we all know and love, but mainly don't discuss enough in the world of effectiveness in advertising, and that is the power of music. So if there's anyone in this room who sat in a creative review and heard the words, "We'll sort the music later," this session is for you. We're not going to talk about sonic logos today or jingles. We're also not going to talk about the music that was recommended by the director's friend. We're going to talk about music that drives tangible ROI, that builds brand fame, that impacts pricing power, and that really delivers results for your brand. So I'm joined today by the fantastic Les Binet. Round of applause for Les Binet, everyone. And the lovely Tom Noble from CloudArmy. Round of applause for Tom Noble. And together with Les and Tom and a number of other collaborators, including the IPA database, we've ran a first-of-its-kind study looking into how music really drives business results. And we're going to chat to Les and Tom in a few minutes just about the implications of that study. But first, we're going to talk a little bit about the study itself and its results. So what do we do? So we selected 150 ads from the IPA database that aired in the UK over the last 10 years. And we assessed the impact of the music used in those ads with 7,500 consumers here in the UK. We leveraged our very own methodology called Music IQ, which was developed by MassiveMusic, and we looked at lots of different dimensions of music's impact in advertising. Everything from the fit of the music, how well it actually drove the narrative and elevated the visuals. We looked at the element of surprise. To what extent was the music unexpected? We also looked at things like recall and engagement. And the headline finding really is that, no surprises for me, and hopefully for you guys, music really does drive tangible business impact. So the number one insight, we have three to share with you today. The first insight is talking about pricing power. And what we found was that music that's customized to fit your ad reduces price sensitivity 7-fold, which to me was a pretty astounding finding. So thinking about those ads that have music that has been either created, bespoke for the ad, or even adapted from an existing track, that music is driving a 7-fold decrease in price sensitivity and increase in pricing power. We'll skip the plays. We'll play the next one. The second finding was we looked at brand fame and also return on marketing investment. And we found that music that was a surprising choice for the ad, music that was unexpected and creatively bold, drove brand fame 5 times better than expected music choices and boosted chances of high ROMI as well. Again, some really, really powerful findings there. Let's just take a quick look at the number one choice, the number one ranked ad when it came to musical surprise. Love a bit of Nessun Dorma. And I said I wasn't going to talk about sonic logos, but I can't ignore the strategic use of an audio logo at the end of that KFC ad. Top marks to KFC. And the final insight we're going to talk about is the link between memorable or catchy music and a direct response effect. So we found in this study that ads with the most catchy music, the most memorable music, were significantly more likely to drive direct response effects. By direct response effects, we mean increased footfall in store, increased online web traffic, increased social engagement. So again, memorability in music showing real importance there. So to sum up, if some of these insights sound kind of unsurprising to you, then that's probably because we're sharing insights that we all maybe already knew instinctively, but for some reason have never been properly researched in the advertising industry. So we know that the right music can truly boost ROI. can increase your pricing power as a brand, can make your brand famous, and can also drive direct responses from your consumers. But unfortunately, music is all too often seen as the bottom of the rung, the last decision to be made in the creative process. So the final thought for everyone in this room is, what if we took music as seriously as other creative components in that process? What might happen then? So I'm going to sit down now with my lovely friends over here and have a bit of a chat about the study. Hey, guys.
Hello.
So Les, I'm going to start with you. So you've spent your entire career digging into what actually works in advertising. But when it comes to music in our industry, it's largely been on mute. The research has not really been done. Why do you think music has been so kind of overlooked in advertising?
Yeah, it's interesting, and it's definitely true. I wrote an article a few years ago called The Power of Music. And one of the things that we did was when we looked at the database of research on how advertising works, there's almost nothing written about music. Very few articles at all. It has changed a little bit since then, but it's clearly not something that people take very seriously. And I think one reason for that is we have an underlying mental model of how advertising works, which is that advertising is a communications medium for transmitting messages. And therefore, music just feels like it's garnish, it's a side issue. Peter Field and I fundamentally believe that that model is wrong. For brand building advertising is not a communications medium. It's a training mechanism. It's a way of conditioning people to feel something about a brand, not to tell them something about the brand. And when you realise that, you realise actually that's why music is so powerful, and that's why it's been ignored. So your study is quite consistent with what we found in our study, which is maybe 20 to 30% of the sales you make from music, from advertising, come from the music. 20 to 30% of what you sell is determined by the choice of the track. And that both tells you that advertising is not a communications medium, it's about making people feel something. And also we should be spending a lot more time and a lot more money thinking about the music. I mean, imagine if you're spending £10 million on advertising and 30% of the payback comes from the choice of the track, then you could probably justify spending about £3 million, up to £3 million on getting the right music. We don't do that.
Absolutely agreed. And just building on the findings specifically, one of the really interesting findings here is this looking at this kind of novel metric, the element of surprise in music. Do you think that this finding, this link between surprise and fame is a surprising result, excuse the pun, and does it give us something new to build on?
It's not surprising. One of the things, we talked a lot about fame in our work and the importance of fame for amplifying effectiveness. And if there's one element that consistently comes up when you're thinking about famous advertising is surprise. You want to do something that grabs people's attention. So, I mean, that KFC example, that's a nice example of doing something that, is a bit unexpected and is therefore likely to grab people's attention. So that's not surprising. But what's quite interesting is that there's a sort of slightly contradictory finding in your research, which is music that fits the advertising, that obviously kind of goes with the brand, which is kind of unsurprising music, is also very effective.
Yeah.
And I think what's going on there is it's, if you just want to get people's attention, do something remarkable and bold, but actually over the long term, what you want to do is to own it.
Yep.
And you can do both.
Yeah. Love it. Thanks, Les. So, Tom, moving on to you. So your company, CloudArmy, tap into the mind and behavior for a living. What's going on in the brain when music in an ad surprises us?
I think when talking about surprise, it's kind of, we view that as the mind views that as a disruption. And the kind of default setting for the mind is to be constantly scanning for conformity and for harmony and consistency and familiarity. So if you shove something in front of it, it's a great way of grabbing attention. The trick really is to have music that not just grabs the attention but sustains that attention. And the only way to sustain attention is to give the brain a little reward for all its extra hard work that it's having to do, rather than getting on with the normal stuff that it would do. So there's an investment from the brain point of view. What's the payback? There has to be emotional engagement of some description. And that emotional engagement is really important, because that's the thing that can help amplify emotions, of course, and messaging, and of course those things then translate into memory. And at the end of the day, your brand and your advertising exists in your memory, in your memory webs, constellations of associations. And so surprise can be a surprisingly powerful package if you get it right.
Yeah, agreed. Has to be gotten right for sure. I want to talk to you about the methodology for the study, because we designed that Music IQ methodology together.
You did?
With support from Les, of course. And yeah, what were some of the considerations when designing that methodology?
I think the first consideration is always, from our perspective, is, creativity is designed by smart, intuitive people to work at an intuitive, often a non-conscious level, which is, of course, how we know advertising and all kinds of other communication works. And therefore, it's always puzzled us a little bit about why you wouldn't test creative outputs at whatever stage, and particularly advertising, it's at, using deeper level methods. And so that was the first consideration, is make sure that we've got some methodologies together that can robustly and with a good degree of sensitivity, because sometimes measuring very small effects, create some multimodal studies that allow you to measure things at this deeper level, as well as, of course, asking people questions more directly. So that's really sort of fundamentally important in terms of getting the paradigms together.
Agreed. And I think that, that goes for any kind of music measurement. We're definitely big champions of tapping into the implicit, the gut emotional response when it comes to music. Not least because it's very difficult to rationalize how you feel about a piece of music, but also because we know that we process it often more implicitly. So Les, one of the other findings that kind of surprised us, and you alluded to this a little bit earlier, was this notion that when the music fits the film really well, when it's being customized for a film, we're seeing price sensitivity go down. What's your take on that? What do you think is happening there?
Well, again, that's not terribly surprising to me. We know that when you build a strong brand, people think about price less. So if you've got a brand that people really feel good about, and it is primarily emotional, then price is just a smaller part of the decision. We also know that tends to take time. You've got to build a brand up over time to get that strength of feeling that means that people will pay more. And that will be associated with long-running campaigns where you've done things consistently. So I suspect what's going on here is, for example, one of the examples in the database was the GWR Railways campaign that we did, which I think System 1 rated it as the most consistent campaign of recent years. So we built a campaign that was consistent over media, consistent over time, consistent in its use of a style of music. So that's become deeply associated with the brand, and it is part of what you feel when you think GWR. So, and these price effects are really, really important. Again, misconception. We have this misconception that advertising is a communications medium. It isn't. It's a training mechanism. That's why we're evil. And we think we're in the business of shifting volume. Partly, but actually the big payback comes from getting people to pay more for the same old shit, which is why we're evil. And music can help you do both jobs.
Yeah, I love that potential link we're drawing there between kind of consistency and that kind of film fit, and how those two things kind of can work together. Yeah,
so I was thinking the tension between surprise and consistency. This is not a musical example, but if you think about the Gary Lineker Walker's Crisps campaign. So we did the first one of those back in, 1996 or something ridiculous like that. So in that first ad, Gary Lineker, who was seen as Mr. Nice Guy, was stealing the crisps, and that was a very surprising and famous thing to do. And then he kept stealing the crisps for years, and therefore it became, exactly what you expected. So surprise can turn into, familiarity over time.
100% agree. Okay, I think we've only got time for kind of one more question. So it's a question for both of you, and I'm going to start with you, Tom. What would be kind of, okay, I'm going to do a double question. What is your MVP of those 4 metrics? Surprise, memorability, engagement, or fit? Which one is your MVP? And then second one is, what's kind of one piece of advice for marketeers looking to leverage music?
Tough question. Memorability for me is the goal. It's a strategic goal for advertising. And surprise and those other things are contributors. And knowing how to manipulate them is obviously the trick. But memorability is what's stored in the mind for recall, for understanding of branding and all the rest of it. So memorability for me is the number one. Are you asking for some advice?
Yes, please. Yes. One piece of advice for marketers who want to stop playing it safe with music.
I'd say, please, start taking music more seriously, whether it's for advertising, for anything else. It's potentially a very, very powerful strategic asset, brand asset for you. Don't think about just the latest TV execution. Think about it, what that's going to contribute, what the sound of your brand is like, and take it seriously and go and talk to people who've got the capabilities to help you.
Thanks, Tom. Very subtle, very subtle. Les, your MVP metric and your advice, please.
MVP,
yeah.
What does that mean? Sorry, I hate TLAs.
Yeah. Your number
three
one.
letter acronyms.
Yeah. Your number one metric. What's your number one metric?
I don't think I'd have one.
Okay.
One problem with drawing up rules for creativity is that creativity is about breaking rules. So any trick, any formula that you use to make a good musical ad will stop working because other people will use it.
Yep.
It's like, so it's like, how do you have a hit record, Well, any formula that works will stop working. I think what Tom said about taking it really seriously is the big lesson here. Again, reiterate, if 20 to 30% of the money you make from advertising is determined by the choice of music, then it's really fucking important, and you pay attention and pay money for it. Don't sort of penny pinch and go for some shitty library track when paying, I don't know, some popular beat combo to license their track, thank you very much, is probably worth a lot of money. So take it seriously and use it creatively, and remember that actually that might have much more effect and make much more of a difference than all the stuff you've been doing about the product in the ad and the proposition and whether you've got the pouring shot and all that stuff.
Love it. Thank you both so much. Two legends, and thanks everyone for listening.
Thank you.
Hold up, guys, if that's okay. Because, again, there was a fascinating thing. But there are just a couple of questions. We've got 5 minutes until the next question. So can you stay just for 2 more minutes?
No.
Well, Les, you're back in 5 minutes. So, so listen, and thank you, everyone, for asking questions. A bit more interactive. The first thing is, to all of you, we've just essentially lived through a live podcast here. We've been talking about music, but really we've also been talking about audio. Do you think that some of the learnings that we've been talking about here might also be applied to other audio formats? Would it work for some of the learnings that you're talking about for podcasts and radio as well?
Well, I guess mainly no, because this is about music is different from other things that you hear. But if there was transferable learning, it might be to do with the music of speech. Not the content of speech, but the music of speech.
Accents and...
Accents, cadence, poetry.
Perhaps we should be spending more money on Welsh voiceovers.
That's always a good idea. Poetry, I mean, think about rhythm and cadence. Rhymes. We didn't talk about jingles, but one of the things that we know from the recent System 1 research is of the fluent devices, the top 3 fluent devices, 2 of them are sonic, jingles and sonic logos. And obviously rhyme and cadence and rhythm is very important in jingles. We don't take that stuff seriously. I mean, deeply unfashionable, isn't it, to have a jingle?
Absolutely, yep. And listen, just one final question. This is for you, Aifric. Rather, you've had all these experts on stage, but you, of course, are an expert yourself, which is, in your work, have you found that particular genres of music are more effective than others at doing stuff? And obviously, definitely this is going to be it's a depends thing, but perhaps rather than saying one is better than another, what have you found has worked?
It's a very tough question, and actually it really is a depends thing. I think when it comes to genre, what we typically try and do is, for working with a brand, is look at what's happening in their category, look at what's happening in the wider industry, and really and then look at their own brand identity, their audience, think about what their audience might be listening to. We do a lot of research into understanding kind of audience listening habits and that kind of thing, and ultimately we look to carve out a unique musical white space for that brand that feels authentic to them across those 3 kind of lenses: their brand, their audience, and their category. To
sort
make
of
sure
going back to your original thing about surprisal, that if everyone's using grime, then a bit of drill might help.
Exactly.
If I can just butt in that irritating way I always do. There is a really useful trick, which is that people always love the music that was around when they were around about 17. And that stays with people through their lives. It's a recognised phenomenon. So if you're targeting age groups, then that's quite a nice way to key into a particular demographic cohort. We use that on the John Lewis Christmas ads in a very simple way, which was we took ads that older people might know, and then we reversioned them with younger artists who are a bit younger and hipper. The typical sort of breathy singer. Was it Lily Allen doing a cover version of Keane? And that way we get double duty.
Yeah, very good. Well, listen, guys, thank you very much, and thank you for answering extra questions. Guys, make some sonic appreciation for an excellent sonic. Thanks very much.